Rain hammered against the tall windows of the architecture firm on the 7th floor. David sat alone at his desk, the blue glow of his computer screen reflecting off his tired eyes. It was nearly 8 in the evening and everyone else had gone home hours ago. The deadline for the Harrison project was tomorrow morning, and he still had 3 more blueprints to finalize. He rubbed his face and reached for his cold coffee. This had become his life lately. Work until exhaustion, go home to an empty apartment, sleep, and repeat. 6 months had passed since Rebecca left, and he still couldn't shake the feeling that something inside him had broken that day. The elevator dinged somewhere down the hall. David's head snapped up. Nobody should be here this late. He heard footsteps, heels clicking against the polished floor, getting closer. His heart started beating faster, that instinctive alertness when something unexpected happens. Then she appeared in his doorway. Isabella from the design coordination team. He'd seen her around the office a few times over the past month, maybe exchanged polite hellos twice. She was new to the company, brought in to handle client relations for their bigger projects. Dark hair pulled back, wearing a gray business suit that somehow looked both professional and elegant at the same time. "Oh," she said, genuine surprise crossing her face. "I didn't think anyone would still be here." David blinked. "Yeah, deadline tomorrow. What brings you back?" "I left my portfolio in the conference room earlier. Had a presentation with a client this afternoon." She gave an apologetic smile. "I know it's late. I'll just grab it and get out of your way." "No, it's fine. I could use the distraction, honestly." The words came out before he could think about them. Something about the emptiness of the office, the rain outside, made normal boundaries feel less important. She paused, tilting her head slightly. "Rough day?" "Rough 6 months, actually." He laughed, but it came out hollow. "Sorry. That was probably too honest for a work conversation." Isabella stepped into his office instead of walking away. "I've had a few of those myself. The rough months, I mean." She glanced at the rain streaming down the windows. "Can I ask what you're working on?" "I've always been curious about what you architects actually do when you're staring at those screens all day." And just like that, the conversation started. What should have been a quick exchange turned into 20 minutes, then 40. David found himself explaining the Harrison project, how he was trying to incorporate sustainable design elements without compromising the building's aesthetic appeal. Isabella lit up when he mentioned sustainability. She'd recently completed a certification in green building materials. They moved from the desk to the chairs near the window. The automatic lights dimmed to night mode, saving energy after hours. Neither of them got up to turn them back on. The soft glow from the city below and the occasional lightning flash became their only illumination. "You know what's funny?" Isabella said, crossing her legs and leaning back. "I've seen you around the office, and I always thought you looked so focused, so sure of yourself. Like you had everything figured out." David almost laughed out loud. "That's the best acting I've done in years then. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together." "I get that." Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. "I finalized my divorce 2 months ago. Spent the last year of my marriage feeling completely invisible, like I'd disappeared into someone else's life and forgotten who I was." The honesty surprised him. People didn't usually open up like this, especially not at work, especially not with someone they barely knew. But something about the late hour, the rain, the empty building made normal rules feel irrelevant. "My girlfriend left 6 months ago," David heard himself say. "Found someone else. Said I was too distant, too buried in my work. The funny thing is, she wasn't wrong. I did bury myself in work, because it was easier than dealing with how unhappy we both were." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Isabella was quiet for a moment, looking out at the rain-soaked city. "Do you think we do that on purpose?" "Bury ourselves in work, I mean. Like maybe if we stay busy enough, we won't have to face how lonely we actually are." The question hit harder than David expected. "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, I think that's exactly what we do." She turned to look at him, then really look at him. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black in the dim light. "I've been going through life these past couple months trying to prove something to myself. That I'm still alive, still capable of feeling things. Does that make sense?" "It does." His throat felt tight. "I've been doing the opposite, trying not to feel anything at all." "How's that working out for you?" "Terribly." Isabella smiled, but there was sadness in it. "We're a mess, aren't we? 2 broken people having an existential crisis in a dark office while it rains outside. This is either the beginning of a really bad decision or the most honest conversation I've had in years." Maybe both? David offered. She laughed, and the sound was genuine, warm. It cut through the melancholy that had been hanging over them. You know what I realized recently? I spent so long being who my ex-husband wanted me to be that I forgot what I actually wanted, what I liked, who I was before I tried to fit into someone else's life. And who are you? David asked. Now that you're figuring it out again, I'm still working on that part. She stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The rain created patterns on the glass, distorting the city lights below. But I know I'm tired of being careful, tired of second-guessing everything, tired of playing it safe. David watched her silhouette against the window. There was something different about her now. A shift in energy he couldn't quite name. His heart started beating faster again, but for a different reason this time. Can I tell you something? Isabella turned to face him. I noticed you the first week I started here. Not because of anything you did, but because you had this look, like you were carrying something heavy, and you were determined not to let anyone see it. I recognized it because I saw the same look in the mirror every morning. She walked toward him, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something electric. David stood up without thinking, his body responding before his mind could catch up. I don't know what I'm doing, she said quietly. She was close now, close enough that he could see her chest rising and falling with each breath. I just know I'm tired of being afraid, tired of overthinking everything. Her hands moved to her jacket, and she let it slip off her shoulders. It fell to the floor with a soft whisper of fabric. Then her blazer unbuttoned slowly, deliberately. She wasn't breaking eye contact, wasn't hesitating. There was a confidence in her movements that made David's breath catch in his throat. Tell me to stop, she whispered. But he couldn't. He didn't want to. For 6 months he'd been numb, going through motions, pretending to be fine. And now in this moment he felt awake for the first time since Rebecca left. Awake and terrified and alive all at once. Isabella closed the remaining distance between them. Her hand came up to his face, fingers gentle against his jaw. Is this okay? She asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. David nodded, not trusting his voice. And then she kissed him. Not tentatively, not gently. She kissed him like she was making a choice, taking a risk, refusing to play it safe anymore. Her lips were soft and urgent against his, and years of loneliness seemed to collapse in that single moment. He responded instinctively, his hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened and everything else disappeared. The office, the rain, the deadlines, the heartbreak, all of it faded into nothing. There was only this moment, only this connection, only the feeling of being wanted and wanting someone in return. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isabella rested her forehead against his. I can't believe I just did that, she whispered. I can't believe you did either, David managed. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could feel it. She pulled back slightly, searching his face. Do you regret it? He thought about lying, about playing it cool. But she'd been honest with him, brutally honest, and she deserved the same. No, he said. I don't regret it at all. I'm terrified about what it means, but I don't regret it. Isabella smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Good, because I'm terrified too. But I'm done letting fear make all my decisions. They stood there in the dim office, the rain still falling outside, both of them knowing that something had shifted, something that couldn't be unshifted. The careful boundaries of professional colleagues had been crossed, and there was no going back to simple hellos in the hallway. Part 2. The morning came too quickly and too bright. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as David walked into the office at 8 sharp. He'd barely slept, his mind replaying the night before on an endless loop. Isabella's kiss, the way she'd looked at him, the feeling of being truly seen by another person for the first time in months. He'd left the office around 10 the night before, after they'd sat together for another hour, talking in quieter tones, reality slowly creeping back in. They'd exchanged phone numbers. She'd touched his arm before leaving, a gesture that felt both casual and weighted with meaning. And then she was gone, and David was left standing alone in the parking garage wondering what on earth had just happened. Now, in the harsh light of day, doubt crept in. What if she regretted it? What if she thought he'd taken advantage of a vulnerable moment? What if this made everything weird at work? He'd spent 6 months carefully rebuilding his life into something stable and predictable, and one kiss had thrown it all into chaos. He tried to focus on work. The Harrison blueprint sat on his desk, The deadline he'd been so stressed about yesterday now feeling distant and unimportant. He made revisions, sent emails, attended a morning meeting. All the while, his eyes kept drifting to the elevator, wondering if he'd see her. At 11:30, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that he somehow knew was her before he even opened it. "We should talk. Coffee?" David stared at the message for a full minute. Those 3 words contained everything. Uncertainty, possibility, the need to define what had happened between them. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of him wanted to suggest they just forget about it. Pretend nothing happened. Go back to being strangers who passed in hallways, but he couldn't. Because as terrified as he was, he also couldn't stop thinking about how alive he'd felt last night. "Yeah. When and where?" he typed back. They met at a cafe 3 blocks from the office, neutral territory. David got there first, ordered a black coffee he didn't really want, and sat at a table by the window. His leg bounced nervously under the table. Isabella arrived 10 minutes later. She looked different in the daylight, more guarded. Her hair was down today, falling past her shoulders. She wore a simple blue dress, professional but softer than her usual work attire. She spotted him and walked over, her expression unreadable. "Hi," she said, sitting down across from him. "Hi." David's voice came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat. "Thanks for suggesting this. I was going kind of crazy in my head this morning." She smiled slightly, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Me too. I kept replaying everything, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake." The words stung, even though he'd been thinking the same thing. "Was it a mistake?" Isabella looked down at her hands, fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. "I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know." She looked up at him, and he saw the same fear he felt reflected in her eyes. Last night felt real. It felt right in the moment. But in the daylight, I keep second-guessing everything, wondering what I was thinking, walking into your office and just doing what I did. "You don't have to apologize," David said quickly. "I was there too. I participated. And I'm glad I did. Are you?" she asked softly. "Or are you just being polite?" He took a breath. This was the moment to be honest, to match the vulnerability she'd shown him. "I spent the last 6 months feeling nothing. Just working, existing, going through motions. And last night, when you kissed me, I felt something again. It scared me. But it also reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling things. So no, I'm not just being polite. I meant what I said." Isabella's expression softened. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. I've been doing reckless things since my divorce, trying to prove to myself that I'm not the person I was in that marriage. Last night was part of that. I don't want you to think you were just another reckless decision, but I also can't promise that I wasn't using you to feel something, to reclaim some part of myself I'd lost." The honesty was brutal and refreshing at the same time. "So what does that mean?" David asked. "For us, I mean. If there even is an us." "I don't know," she admitted. "What do you want it to mean?" David ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture he'd had since childhood. "I want to say we should just see what happens, take it slow, be mature adults about it. But I'm also terrified that I'm just your rebound, or that you're figuring yourself out and I'm going to get hurt in the process." "Those are valid fears," Isabella said. "And I can't promise you won't get hurt. I'm still a mess. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of being someone's wife, but..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But I also know that what I felt last night wasn't just about being reckless. There was something real there. I felt connected to you in a way I haven't felt connected to anyone in years." They sat in silence for a moment, the cafe buzzing with lunchtime activity around them. Someone's phone rang. A barista called out an order. Life went on while they tried to figure out if they were brave enough to risk something together. "What if we just try?" David finally said. Not jumping into anything serious, not putting pressure on it, just seeing each other, talking, getting to know each other outside of one intense night in a dark office. Isabella considered this, and slowly a smile spread across her face. "You mean like dating? Actual dating? Yeah, I guess so. Is that too normal? Too boring?" "No," she said, and her smile widened. "It's perfect. It's exactly what I need, actually. Something normal. Something that doesn't feel like I'm running from one thing or desperately grabbing onto another." Relief washed over David. "Okay. So we'll try. We'll take it slow." "Slow," she agreed. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and the simple touch sent electricity through him. But I have to tell you something else. My ex-husband has been calling me, trying to get back together. He realized what he lost, apparently, now that it's too late. David's stomach dropped. And how do you feel about that? Honestly, angry. Angry that he thinks he can just waltz back in now that I'm starting to figure out my life again. But also, she hesitated. Also a little confused. Because there's a part of me that remembers loving him, and that part wonders if I should give it another chance. The honesty hurt, but David appreciated it. I can't tell you what to do with that, I know, and I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know that my life is complicated right now. I'm not coming to you with a clean slate. None of us have clean slates, David said. We all come with history and baggage and complications. The question is whether we're willing to deal with that together, or if it's too much. Isabella squeezed his hand. I want to deal with it. I want to try this, whatever this is, but I need you to be patient with me. I need you to know that I might mess up, might have moments where I doubt everything, might need space to figure things out. I can do that, David said, as long as you're honest with me. That's all I ask. Just be honest, even when it's hard. Deal. She stood up, still holding his hand. I should get back to work. But can we have dinner this week? Something normal? Something that doesn't involve dark offices and rainstorms? David smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. She leaned down and kissed his cheek, a gentle gesture that felt different from the intensity of the night before. Softer, more intentional, like a promise rather than a desperate grasp at feeling something. As she walked away, David sat back in his chair, his coffee cold in front of him. His heart was still racing, but it was a different kind of fear now. Not the fear of numbness, but the fear of hope. The fear that comes with caring about something again, with being vulnerable, with letting someone in. He picked up his phone and looked at their text exchange. 3 messages that had led to this moment of possibility. He saved her number, typing in her name. Isabella. Not just a colleague anymore, not just a momentary connection in a dark office. Someone real. Someone who might become important. The afternoon passed in a blur. David went back to work, but his mind was elsewhere. He caught himself smiling at random moments, then feeling guilty about the smile, then wondering why he should feel guilty at all. Rebecca was gone. His old life was gone. Maybe it was okay to feel hopeful about something new. His phone buzzed again around 3. Another text from Isabella. Thank you for meeting me, for being honest. For giving this a chance, David typed back quickly. Thank you for being brave enough to walk into my office last night. For being honest today. For giving me a reason to feel something again. Her response came almost immediately. We're both pretty brave, aren't we? Or pretty stupid. Maybe both. He laughed out loud, earning a curious look from a coworker passing by. Definitely both, he typed. But I'm okay with that. The rest of the week felt different. David noticed colors more vividly, tasted his food more clearly, felt more present in conversations. Isabella had awakened something in him that had been dormant for months. Whether it lasted or not, whether they worked out or not, he was grateful for that gift. They texted throughout the week, small exchanges that felt important. She sent him a photo of a building she thought he'd appreciate. He sent her an article about sustainable design. Nothing profound, just 2 people getting to know each other, building something slowly instead of rushing in. Phone for the 3rd time. Isabella had suggested this place. Said it was quiet enough to actually talk, but lively enough not to feel too serious. He'd changed his shirt twice before leaving his apartment, finally settling on a simple button-down and jeans. Not too formal, not too casual. He saw her walking up the street and felt his breath catch. She wore a dark green dress that moved with her steps, her hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't wearing the professional armor she wore at work. This was someone different, softer, more herself. Hey, she said, smiling as she reached him. Have you been waiting long? Just got here, he lied, though he'd actually been standing there for 10 minutes, too nervous to go inside alone. Dinner started awkwardly. They both reached for the bread basket at the same time, laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't that funny, filled silences with observations about the restaurant decor. But somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, something shifted. The conversation found its rhythm. Isabella told him about growing up in a small town, how she'd always dreamed of living in a big city, about her family, complicated and loving in equal measures, about how she'd met her ex-husband in college, married too young, spent a decade trying to be someone she thought she should be. David shared his own story. His parents' divorce when he was 12, how it made him cautious about relationships. His love of building things, creating spaces where people could live their lives. How Rebecca had been safe, predictable, until one day she wasn't, and he realized they'd both been hiding in that safety instead of actually living. "Can I ask you something?" Isabella said, twirling pasta on her fork. "When Rebecca left, were you heartbroken or relieved?" The question surprised him with its directness. "Both," he admitted. "Heartbroken because it meant I'd failed at something I'd invested years in. Relieved because I didn't have to pretend anymore that everything was fine." She nodded slowly. "That's exactly how I felt when my marriage ended. Like I was mourning the idea of what I thought I had more than the actual relationship itself." "Do you think that's sad?" David asked. "That we spent so much time in relationships that weren't really working?" "I think it's human," Isabella said. "We hold on to things because letting go is scary, even when holding on is slowly suffocating us." After dinner, they walked through the city. The evening was cool, autumn settling in properly now. Isabella wrapped her arms around herself, and David offered his jacket without thinking. She accepted it, and the gesture felt intimate in a way that surprised them both. They found themselves at a small park, sitting on a bench overlooking a pond. City lights reflected on the water's surface, creating patterns that shifted and changed with each ripple. "I need to tell you something," Isabella said, her voice serious. "My ex-husband called again yesterday. He wants to meet up to talk properly. He says he made a mistake, that he understands now what he lost." David's chest tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "And you're going to meet him?" "I think I have to," she said quietly. "Not because I want to get back together, but because I need closure. I need to look him in the eye and tell him that door is closed. Does that make sense?" It did, even though David didn't want it to. "Yeah, it makes sense. Are you angry?" "No," he said honestly. "I'm scared. Scared that you'll see him and realize what you had was better than what we're trying to build. But I'm not angry. You need to do what you need to do." Isabella turned to face him on the bench. "I'm not going to lie to you. There's a part of me that's curious, that wonders what if, because 10 years is a long time to share with someone, and you don't just stop caring completely." She reached for his hand. "But there's also a part of me that knows going back is just another way of hiding, of choosing the familiar over the unknown because it's less scary." "What are you going to do?" David asked. "I'm going to meet him. I'm going to listen, and then I'm going to choose what's best for me, not what's easiest or most comfortable." She squeezed his hand. "I'm telling you this because I promised to be honest. I don't want secrets between us." David appreciated the honesty even as it terrified him. "Okay, I trust you." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. A jogger passed by. A couple walked past, holding hands and laughing. Life continued around them while they navigated their own complicated situation. "Can I ask you something now?" David said. "If your ex-husband wasn't in the picture, if it was just you and me figuring this out, what would you want?" Isabella was quiet for a long moment. "I think I'd want what we have right now, this talking honestly. Getting to know each other without pressure or expectations. Learning who you are beyond that night in the office." She looked at him. "I'd want to build something real even if it's scary. Even if it might not work out." "I want that too," David said, "but," she prompted, hearing the hesitation in his voice. "But I'm terrified of being a rebound. Of being the person you turn to while you figure yourself out, only to realize I was just a stepping stone to something else." "That's fair," Isabella said. "And I can't promise you that won't happen. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of my marriage. But I can promise you that I'm not using you. Whatever this is between us, it's not about filling a void or running from something. It feels real to me." David wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that what they were building could survive the complications of her past and his fears. But trust didn't come easily to him anymore. "I need to tell you something too," he said, "about why Rebecca really left. She didn't just find someone else. She left because I pulled away first. Because every time things got too real, too emotional, I retreated into work. I have this thing where I sabotage relationships before they can hurt me." He looked at Isabella. "I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you're getting into. I'm not easy to be with. Neither am I, she said simply. We're both damaged. Both scared. Both trying to figure out how to be vulnerable again without getting destroyed in the process. So what do? David asked. We keep trying, Isabella said. We keep being honest even when it's hard. We give each other space to figure things out. And we accept that this might not work, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. David nodded slowly. It wasn't a fairy tale answer. It wasn't a guarantee of happily ever after, but it was real and honest and more than he'd felt in a long time. They stayed at the park until it got too cold to sit anymore. Then they walked back through the city, side by side, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's presence. At the corner where they'd part ways, Isabella stopped. Thank you for tonight, she said. For listening. For not running away when I told you about my ex. Thank you for being honest, David replied. Even though it scared me? She leaned in and kissed him, different from that first kiss in the office. This was gentler, more questioning. Like she was asking if this was okay, if they were okay. David kissed her back, answering the question without words. When they pulled apart, she smiled. I'll call you after I meet with him. Whatever happens, I'll call you. Okay, David said, though every instinct screamed at him to ask her not to go, not to risk what they were building. He watched her walk away, her figure disappearing into the city crowd. Then he turned and headed home, his mind racing with possibilities and fears in equal measure. The next few days were torture. David tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting. Isabella had texted him Monday morning saying she was meeting her ex-husband that evening. Then silence. Tuesday passed with no word. By Wednesday, David was convinced he'd lost her, that she'd chosen the familiar comfort of her past over the uncertain future they'd been building. Thursday afternoon, his phone finally rang. Isabella's name appeared on the screen. David's heart hammered as he answered. Hey, he said, trying to keep his voice neutral. Hey. She sounded tired. Can we talk? In person? Yeah, where? Our park. The one with the pond. I'll be there in 20 minutes. David practically ran to the park, his mind spinning through every possible scenario. She was going back to her ex-husband. She'd realized she didn't want the complications of starting something new. She'd decided he wasn't worth the risk. She was already sitting on their bench when he arrived. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. David's stomach dropped. So, he said, sitting down beside her, not trusting himself to say more. Isabella took a deep breath. I met with him. We talked for 3 hours. He apologized, told me everything I'd wanted to hear for the last year of our marriage, said he'd changed, that he understood now what he'd taken for granted. She paused. And you know what I realized? What? David's voice was barely a whisper. That I didn't care anymore. All those words I desperately wanted to hear, they didn't matter. Because I've changed too. I'm not the person who needed his validation anymore. She turned to look at David, tears streaming down her face. I told him it was over. Really over. Not because of you, but because I finally understood that going back would be choosing comfort over growth, safety over possibility. Relief flooded through David so intensely it almost hurt. Are you okay? I'm sad, she admitted. Sad for the time we wasted. Sad for the person I used to be who would have jumped at the chance to fix things. But I'm also free, really free for the first time in years. David didn't know what to say. 3 weeks passed, then a month, then 6 weeks. David and Isabella fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and intentionally built. They had dinner twice a week, took long walks on weekends, texted throughout the day about random things. Work observations, funny overheard conversations, photos of interesting buildings or design elements they thought the other would appreciate. It wasn't passionate intensity anymore. It was something quieter, steadier. David found himself looking forward to her presence in ways that surprised him. Not just the physical attraction, though that was still there, but the way she made him laugh. The way she challenged his perspectives. The way she listened when he talked about his projects, genuinely interested, asking questions that showed she was really paying attention. One Saturday afternoon, they ended up at an art gallery. Isabella had been talking about an exhibition for weeks, contemporary pieces focused on transformation and identity. David wasn't particularly into modern art, but he went because she was excited about it. They wandered through the rooms, Isabella stopping to study each piece carefully, while David tried to understand what he was looking at. One installation caught his attention, a series of architectural models that had been deliberately broken and reassembled in new configurations. "What do you think?" Isabella asked, coming to stand beside him. "I think whoever made this understood something about building," David said slowly, "about how sometimes you have to break something down completely before you can create something new from the pieces." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That's beautiful, and kind of perfect for where we both are, isn't it? We're both broken pieces trying to figure out how to build something new." "Yeah," he agreed. "We are." Later, they grabbed coffee at a small cafe Isabella loved. It had become their place, the spot they defaulted to when they wanted to talk. David ordered his usual black coffee. Isabella got some complicated drink with oat milk and lavender. "Can I tell you something?" Isabella said, stirring her coffee absently. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want. Not just with us, but with my life. And I realized I've been living reactively for so long, reacting to my marriage failing, reacting to my ex wanting me back, even reacting to meeting you. I haven't been actively choosing what I want." "What do you want?" David asked. She met his eyes. "I want to stop being scared. I want to trust that choosing something good doesn't mean it'll inevitably fall apart. I want to believe that I deserve this, whatever this is between us." David reached across the table and took her hand. "You do deserve it. We both do. Do you really believe that?" she asked. "Or are you still waiting for me to realize I made a mistake?" The question was uncomfortably accurate. David had been carrying that fear quietly in the back of his mind, waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Isabella to wake up one day and realize she could do better. "I'm working on believing it," he admitted. "Old habits are hard to break. I spent so long thinking I wasn't enough for Rebecca that it's hard to believe I might be enough for you." "You're more than enough," Isabella said fiercely, "and I need you to know that. Because I can feel you holding back sometimes, and I get it, I really do. But I need you to know that I'm here because I want to be. Not because I'm settling or figuring things out or using you as a bridge to something else. I'm here because you make me feel seen in a way I haven't felt in years." David's throat tightened. "I'm here for the same reason." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both processing the weight of what they'd just shared. Then Isabella's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression changed, something between annoyance and resignation crossing her face. "What is it?" David asked. "My ex again. He's not taking the closure well. Keeps texting, calling, asking if we can talk one more time." She put her phone face down on the table. "I've been ignoring most of it, but it's getting exhausting." David felt a familiar spike of insecurity. "Does he have a chance of getting you back?" "No," Isabella said firmly. "Absolutely not. But I do need to figure out how to make him understand that. Set harder boundaries, maybe block his number. I've been too passive about it because I didn't want to be cruel. But kindness is clearly being misinterpreted as hope." "I trust you," David said, and he meant it. "But I'd be lying if I said it doesn't bother me that he's still in the picture." "It bothers me.